Hopefully that works. Hopefully that. Okay. So in the first chapter, I was really surprised by the quote, and I'm just going to read it. I have posted it a few times that true belonging is the spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of and something and standing alone in the wilderness. To belong doesn't require you to change who you are, it requires you to be who you are. The first time I read that, I was like, what? Like, what does that mean? Um, so I definitely related to Brene in the beginning when she was like, no, that's wrong.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for like reading her work because I really appreciate someone who can like drop a well-placed curse word. Like she is so unapologetically herself, and I love that. Like,
The whole clogs thing when she goes back and changes and she
yeah,
comes out and the lady goes, that's great, you're brave. And
yeah,
she's like, that's kind of my point.
right.
I can't do this if I'm not comfortable because in order to be brave, you have to be comfortable with yourself in
Yeah,
some way, shape, or form, especially if you're not in the clothes. Like I relate to that a lot, and I know probably you do too, because teaching, it's like you want to look professional, but you also have
mhm,
to get down on the floor.
yep,
So, and like you might get it dirty. Like I can't tell you how many times I've worn this tank top because it's appropriate and it's just easy to wear when it's hot. And then
mhm,
yeah, it's just it's that's a hard thing.
yeah. But I just love that she just like you know what you get when it comes to her. Like what you see is what you get. She's not going to apologize for it, and I think
And
that's
she's
really
gonna tell the
powerful.
truth.
Yep.
Like when she said none of this was authentic. It was a tribute. So I decided I had to fire those naysayers and fearmongers, and in their places, I began to summon up men and women who have shaped the world with their courage and creativity. Creativity. J.K. Rowling came up here, and I was like, all right, I already love this lady because I love Harry Potter. And
Yeah.
so did she. And she makes so many references to experiences, whether it be in Potter or seeing the movie. It's just, she's a very eloquent writer, is what I call her, because I don't know what other word. Um, this was the one that she deeply disagreed with. You are only free when you realize you belong no place. You belong every place. No place at all. The price is high. The reward is great. I'm like, all right, I identify with the end of it, but like, how do you belong nowhere and everywhere at the same time?
Yeah.
Which is why I decided to go all the way through chapter two, because it kind of goes into that. It starts to go into it.
Yeah, chapter 2 I felt had like a little bit more like meat and potatoes than chapter 1 did. Like just kind of like defining out like what exactly we're doing here, what we're looking at.
Well, yeah, because the only parts that I really wrote down as like big parts were, did you have anything in your childhood like she did with the bear cadet thing, like where she wanted to be in but just wasn't that material. And I think this is the chapter about her name and the homeroom thing.
Yes.
Those 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, I just had like a general sense of not belonging overall, but I don't Like I went to like a really small grade school. So it was like if you wanted to be a cheerleader, you were a cheerleader. And I knew I didn't want to do that in high school because I knew I wouldn't fit in. I knew I wouldn't belong. I knew I wouldn't be accepted. So I just knew that I wasn't going to go for that. Like that was not the path I wanted to take.
I tried, but then, well, actually, I was told by my mom, she's like, "You're not going to make the volleyball team. Why are you trying out for the volleyball team?" And I
Like,
tried out
thanks.
and I didn't make, right? I didn't make it, but the coach was my subject I liked teacher. I don't know if it was English or something else, but she made me the manager and she taught me how to
Oh,
play. And she let me play during practice, every practice. She let me play during some games if like people were hurt or they were playing against somebody bad. And she always took me out like before I had to serve because I was terrible at that. So she taught me a lot and she made me feel like I belonged. I made some
that's awesome.
friends there because I also was in a very small grade school. 91 was my graduating number. So yeah.
See, my grade school, like my eighth grade class, had 19.
So you guys were just one class.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
at
when I
least
was in
we were like
kindergarten, there were like
three,
six of
four
us.
classes, like three, four broken up classes, like homerooms. But
Yeah.
like there were still cliques, but I couldn't imagine with just 19 kids, that's just cliques.
Yeah.
Like there's no room for not belonging. And I can't imagine how much like that would have felt like just being lonely.
Yeah. And there was very like, if someone didn't like you and they wanted to talk about you, there were only 17 other people for them to talk to. So it was like you always heard about it, you always knew about it, but you were in every class all day long together. Like we didn't switch rooms. It was like, this is the seventh grade classroom, this is the eighth grade classroom. So you were there all day, every day. It was a very interesting experience. And then going from that, but at least like with that group, we got close because we were together from kindergarten on and we didn't have a choice. Like it was just us, you know. Like if you had a
Yeah,
birthday
there is
party,
no
you invited
choice
all the
there.
girls. Yeah. And then going to high school, then it's like there's a million other people. And it was like people who don't even know you hate you. And it's like at least, my eighth grade class, if they hated me, they'd spent years getting to figure that out.
Like they had
So
actual reasons why.
yeah. Like they might
And
not have been,
like,
I might not have felt they were valid, but at least they
yeah,
took
they might
time
have
to
been good
develop that opinion.
reasons.
Yeah.
They were reasons where
Yeah.
whether people are like, I just don't like your face. Or
Yeah.
like, yeah, high school was a shock for me because I went from 91 to like over 1,000.
Yeah.
Whew. So yeah, the not belonging thing I related with. And then like the whole I wept for the girl I couldn't comfort back then, the girl who didn't understand what was happening or why. And this, I think, because it's just me and you in here, and I know that Aaron and Kelly both had mental health like experiences and stuff. For me, finding out that I had ADHD, I was like, oh, that's why I was just friends with everybody and I just talked to everybody because that's all I wanted to do was just talk.
Yeah. Well, and it was like
So
for me, like the more I'm learning about ADHD, I'm like, oh, okay, so that's why that is. Oh, okay, that makes more sense now. And like, I'll talk to my therapist and I'll say something and she's like, yep, and that's also your ADHD. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. Like it's just like everything makes a little bit more sense once you learn that, but it doesn't change, like your past experience. It just
just makes
makes
it
it
make
make
a
more
little
sense.
sense.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to just kind of like, you're like, okay, like, and kind of just like comfort that like little you.
Hmm.
Cause I've had to hold her a lot and just be like, it's all
Hmm.
right. It's gonna be fine. Um, let's see, where it is. I'm trying to find. There it is. I thought this was funny. It makes me think that Brene Brown has ADHD when she says things like, This time, the research rabbit hole turned out to be 4 years long. And I'm
Yeah,
like, you hyper focused
relatable.
on this for 4 years?
Yeah.
Um, so the quest for true belonging. This is where she really digs in to, like you said, the meat and potatoes. And I learned personally that belonging is an innate human, not just desire, but it's a need, from my coach. And in here she does say desire. And she because say this yearning, or she does say because this yearning is so primal, we often try to acquire it by fitting in and seeking approval. So,
Yeah.
and like that, those were just substitutes and barriers. And to be yourself, like learning the difference between fitting in and belonging somewhere is still kind of a mind blow for me.
Yeah. Because I think like growing up, we always talk about like wanting to fit in or I didn't fit in. And it's like, but do you want to fit in or do you want to belong, you know?
Well, now it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to fit in. Like that
Yeah.
seems bad. Like it doesn't sound fun to try to fit myself in a box. It's just like just masking all the
Yep.
time. And that's exhausting. And even for
Yes.
typically developing people, it's like you have to find a balance in constraint and what your like limitations are. So, oh gosh. Um, the other part where she keeps calling it a practice, where it's not just something you learn, it's not like a skill. It's like something
Mhm.
you continuously do and make the choice to do. And I'm going through a situation right now. Actually, this is being recorded, so I'm not going to go into detail, but it does require me to be brave. It requires me to do things I've never done before that are scary and threatening to my well being.
Mm,
So I'm living some of what this book is saying right now. And it's kind of empowering and kind of terrifying. And it makes me want to
yeah.
throw up a lot and cry.
Yeah.
But I love how she says it, where she's like, when you see that each is a daily practice and it feels like a paradox, you're like, yeah, I kind of feel like I've been living in a paradox my entire life.
Yeah. Like it felt like when I went through here, I was just like highlighting like all over the place, like just little snippets of things that she said that just like so resonate with me and my experiences and like
Yeah,
there's a lot of good stuff in here. And this is just the first 40 pages, so I can't like
I love the part where she goes into the special courage it takes to experience true belonging is not just about braving the wilderness, it's about becoming the wilderness. It's about breaking down the walls and abandoning our ideological bunkers and living from our wild heart rather than our weary hurt. Wow, I did that
Mhm.
pretty well for her tongue twister of an eloquent sentence
Right.
there. Whoa. And
Yeah.
this is brave for me doing a book club because reading while I'm trying to talk about what I'm reading is hard. I didn't even know it was hard until I just started doing it
Until you try
right
to do
now.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I was like one of those kids like in school. I was like, please don't call on me to read out loud because I know how to read, but it doesn't I don't when I do it out loud, it doesn't come off that way. So I
Yes, it
would be
doesn't
very
sound like it does in my head.
yes.
It
But
sounds
I
so
had
great in my head.
yep, I had highlighted that too, that it's about breaking down the walls. Yeah, all of that.
Yeah. And like the other part of it is like being in someone else's shoes and intentionally being with people are different from us. Intentionally being with those people, asking them
Mhm.
questions, being curious instead of criticizing, and just being that person that's not afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
Um, when she went through the braving inventory, which I'm not going to read out loud because I will just butcher everything, but it really, I would say, first of all, the one that most surprised me was Vault because I was like, oh my gosh, I've totally done that. Where I will keep somebody's some like things confidential, but then I will have done like broken a vault with a different person. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Like I have like my person and I'll be like, I'm only telling you this because you're my person. And then I'm like, dang, like what if they fear that I have another person that I'm telling their things to? Like, yeah, it's that was one thing that I was like, ooh, like just that, yeah, like when you have like your person that you tell everything to, even if it's, someone else's stuff that's not yours to tell, even if they are your person, you know.
And then it's hard because you're
Yes.
like, you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And she even says that, where she's like, it's so relieving when people come into your office and they want to talk about whatever. But
Hmm.
and then when you really think about it, and then when she goes into how it can be used as self trust, how it could be used in groups as family, like you just change the pronoun. So,
Yep.
did we, did we as a family, did we as a work team, did we as a school, for example?
Yeah. It's one of those like saying something out loud to somebody else and like processing it out loud, like as a way to like help process through it. But like if it's someone else's stuff, it's not my place to say it out loud. Like,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
So that was one that, yeah, kind of stuck with me too. I was like, that's something to be like, even if the person I'm sharing it with, I know they're not going to repeat it anywhere else or whatever, it was shared with me in confidence, not for me to share. Even if one other person who won't reshare it, like that wasn't.
When it's about that person you're sharing it with, because what do they think
Hmm.
about how you're sharing or what you're sharing? And
Yep.
I kind of reframed it because I do have my person who I tell everything to, and he doesn't repeat things. But I also am mindful to tell him that I only tell him things
Mhm.
in confidence because I know he's not going to tell anybody. And then I don't tell him, like, I reassure him that I don't tell things that he tells me to other
Right.
people.
It's not like a two-way thing. It's just like a you're my person.
Yeah,
That,
like
yeah.
you're the only one I have to talk to about this. And
Yeah.
I do believe that everyone should have a person like that. And I think that she wrote these in order to be fit to yourself
Yeah.
if you read it the right way. Like I'm working on right now, did I ask for help? And was I non judgmental to myself about needing help? Because I'm always the person who's like, no, I don't need help. I'm good. I'm fine. And I gotta
Yeah.
stop doing that because sometimes I do need help, a lot of help.
Girl, same.
And yeah,
I thought like,
go on.
go ahead. I was just going to say that integrity piece that talked about choosing courage over comfort. That's when I struggle with too, like getting out of my comfort zone, being, courageous. And brave and
Choosing
doing
what's
what's right.
hard instead
Yeah.
of what's easy and fast.
Yep.
Like who doesn't want to take the shortcut?
Mm-hmm. We're like, oh, it's
Um,
easier just to not say anything than to like say something and have to be brave and have to, you know, deal with whatever. So that's one I struggle with.
sorry, I was just reading through my notes. I'm kind of starting to feel the whole belonging to myself thing. Um, I do know that I practice. I think we should end this on a positive note. Like, which one do we think we practice really well? Like, I do feel like do generosity very well, that I always extend the most generous and positive interpretation and intent of people possible. I try not to think that people are doing things to hurt me on purpose or things like that, because in the past, I have been a person who personalized things. That was hard to say.
I am still a person who personalizes things, so I'm working on it.
It was a lot of therapy.
But yeah. I mean, I think accountability is one that I'm pretty proficient in. Like I'm very willing to admit that I am imperfect and I might not always like recognize my mistakes right away, but once I realize them or they're brought to my attention, I'm willing to admit that and apologize and do what I can to make it right. Um,
Yeah, that's definitely one that I've been working on. Um, because I used to just avoid mistakes and just pretend they weren't there.
yeah.
And that didn't get me anywhere good.
See, and that goes back to
Um,
that integrity. It's easier to be comfortable than to have to, yeah.
yeah.
It's yeah.
And choosing what's hard right now is like the only choice for certain situations going on for me. So that whole hold hands with strangers and like strong back, soft front, wild heart. Like
Mhm.
I'm living every day by the minute.
Yeah.
Um, what is the last one I was gonna? Yeah, I definitely don't feel that I have the believing and belonging so deeply that I can fully share my authentic self to the world, but I'm working on it, and it's only chapter 2.
Yeah.
I have read
It's
this
like
book quite a few times. It's very good. All of her
I,
books are really
I say I
well.
have a couple of her other books and I just haven't ever read them. It's one of those like I always mean to, but it's like, like during the school year, like everything is so cumbersome. And then I had this whole human and it's like I've just recently, like in the last 6 months, started reading more and more and more. And so this was a good like kickstart to get me into one of her books and
Yeah, I
I'm
got the
obsessed.
idea from one of my old coaches, and I was like, I'm gonna do that with one of my
Yeah.
favorite Benet books because, like, I've recommended them to people, but I don't know if they've read them, and it'd be
Yeah.
cool to go through them together with like people that want to. Um,
Yes.
because like, the end of it, where she says, the joining of the two works in the paradox thing, it
Mhm.
says it cuts right to the heart of what it means to break out of our ideological bunkers, stand up on our own, and brave the wilderness. Because the Greek origins paradox is the joining of two words, para, contrary to, and doikin, opinion. The only reason I know how to pronounce any of that is because I listened to the audiobook.
Okay.
She
I was like,
pronounced
dang,
it
that
for
was
me.
good, Carmen.
She pronounced it for me. I'm not going to take credit for knowing how to read that. So, the Latin paradoxum means seemingly absurd, but really true. Like what we just said, it seems like it would be absurdly true that we would need to live authentically hard lives because, like, I don't know why Annie always comes to my head. It's like a hard knock life. I don't know. That song always comes to my head. I didn't count the pages. Okay, so we're gonna do 2 and 3. Wait, where's 2? We already did 2. 3 and
Mhm.
4. Did I say that?
You said 2 and 3 at first, but yeah, 3 and 4.
3 and 4. Yeah, we're gonna do 3 and 4. And then I made this repeating, so it's just same time next Monday.
Sounds
And these
good.
are 2 really good chapters because like she digs into like the things that she talked about. The first one is like how she got here, the high lonesome one. And
Okay.
then people are hard to hate, close up, move in, those 4 things. She goes into them in those following 4 chapters. So that's really,
I'm
really good.
excited about that one. The people are hard to hate close up. And I feel like I'm interested to see what she says about that. But I had an experience this past year that I'm like, I feel that statement kind of like resonates with me on that experience. I'm like, okay, I'm excited to see what she says about it
For
and what her
sure.
explanation of it is. So,
For sure. I've definitely felt that a lot before
yeah.
and hold hands with strangers.
Hmm.
So, like, I have chills sometimes when I read her books, and I have chills right now, just like about how much it impacts like what her work does, what her work does. It's just
Yeah.
amazing. And I'm so glad that Oprah and Maya Angelou recognized her
Mhm.
because she wouldn't be as famous as she is now. And it's amazing.
Yes. Have you
So
watched her Netflix special?
I have not. What is it called? Where's my pen?
Is it called? Oh, what did I
I'm
just
sure I could
push?
just Google
I would say I think it's
Brene
just like
Brown
Brene
special.
Brown something, but it's good. It's funny, and she talks about like when she wrote her book Daring Greatly, and
Oh, girl,
uh,
you don't have to sell me. I'm on my way.
all right. I say I can't even. I'm like, where's my remote to get to Netflix? I don't know. If I
I'm
find it
literally
later,
gonna
I'll text
Google
you. But
it. Brene Brown Netflix. It'll pop right up.
I say it might just be called Brene Brown,
It
whatever,
probably
whatever.
is.
So,
Or it's called
but
Wilderness or Brave or Courage. Maybe Shame. She searches
something,
everything. She researches
right?
everything.
She
She's
covers
an
all of the important
amazing,
stuff.
she does. And she's the brave one that goes into it because
Yeah.
that's stuff that, ooh, not a lot of people would touch.
Yeah. But
So,
that's when like I like sometimes I'll just have it on in the background when I'm like putting laundry away because it's just good to rehear. And like it's
mhm.
funny and lighthearted, but it like hits all the good stuff.
I
So
love the way
yeah,
she reads it.
yeah.
I love it. So, all right. Well, thanks for joining me, Missy,
Yeah, thank you.
and hopefully see you next week.
Sounds good.
All righty. Have a good
All
one.
right. You too. Bye.